What's up guys, this is Cher talking. Welcome back to my channel. On today's video I bring you news for months in SaGa. ReUniverSe just announced two new banners for ReUniverSe Festival, Rio Queen Joe, ReUniverSe Festival, Igomahl. Those two banners were expected, especially Joe, but they were released in different weeks on JP. Okay, that is actually a good decision because most people will skip one of these banners. And let's go straight out to Reddit. In a post by Hans43, we were discussing this during our Banner Talk live stream. We always do it on the day they announce banners. And we have the first banner having Joe. They buffed her endurance because it was pretty bad. It seems like Global has some different status for bosses, so it makes sense. She has now 112 endurance and will. Very good status, to be honest. Mages usually have more than just 112, but it is safe. Then 141% intelligence, being the highest offensive status in the game right now. We're only on the 140s. 106% agility, because this also affects her spell accuracy. Moving on, she has lots of damage passives, like we have 30% here at all times. Weak attacks increased by 50%. Overdrive attacks increased by 50%. Spell attack damage increases by another 50%. She still has heat ups of 20% 5 times per battle. That will lead into 100% damage increase. So that means 230 damage potential on turn 5 onwards and 280 on overdrive. Okay, besides that, she starts with 11 BP because of her skills needing at least that. She blocks damage for 3 turns. Yes, she does not take damage for 3 turns, and she triggers defense ups of 15%. So each defense up decreases damage taken by 15% multiplicatively. That makes sense because she cannot cast Rousing Bound on herself. Remember Flame Force from her past style? That allows when other people are hit to trigger AoE attack and defense boosts. In this case, she will have enough defense to not rely on that. Then she has multi-chase attacks. For example, they are based on the element she's using. You can decide to use skill number 2 or 3, they cost 11. Triple S power, it is heat and shadow or cold and shadow. Yes, Joe is doing shadow damage. The extra force effect will work for weak attacks, boosting 25% of final damage. And the extra force, OG, will then improve overdrive damage. So both will stack for 75% increase when attacking on overdrive. She's much stronger on overdrive, but still does enough damage without it. Much like Rock Bouquet, if you were supposed to do 1 million damage, then you would do 1,750,000 because those two will stack. It's a lot of increase. The spell itself has triple S power, but don't worry, it will feel super strong. Then right after, and with that improved damage already, she will chase with 3 different attacks, but you have to land weak attacks. Okay, so if you are attacking with heat and you landed a weak attack, you're gonna chase with Dark Burn. If I'm not mistaken, this is a triple S power attack. And then again with Dominant Blaze, because you landed a weak attack. Because you used it already weak on the first hit. And then you are going to chase a 3rd time with Checkmate. If you are using the cold version, then you are going to trigger other ones. It will be Spectacle Portal, and then Dominant Blaze, and then Checkmate. All attacks have at least triple S power, just so you know. And all of them are already increased by the extra force setup. And then on overdrive, you can get 2 other chases based on the elements you're using. For example, if you're using cold attacks, she's going to chase with Odd Circle and then Twilight Fall. If you're using heat, she's going to chase with Split Blaze that hits 2 or 3 times with C power and even heals. And again, Twilight Fall. The skill Odd Circle is from her past style and applies attack and defense boost. So if you want defense, Odd Circle. If you want to heal, Split Blaze. But you also should be using the spells based on the weakness of your enemy. That makes more sense. She has 6 EP per turn and gets 45 points of overdrive by the end of a turn. That means that on turns where she's not on overdrive, she's totally going to get into overdrive because of her chase attacks. So very powerful character, and it's the new meta for damage. She works well with many other characters, like she works with 4 News for cold setups, she works with Rock Bouquet for shadow setups, she works with Sarwin for shadow. It's too easy to use her, and even if you just want to bring her without considering the other characters, it still works by herself. There's also skill 1, where she will then attack an enemy if it's on overdrive or weak. Then you get 5 extra BP. That is an easy way to give her extra BP if you don't have enough to use skill number 2 or skill number 3. One important thing to say is that extra force effects do not stack, so you don't lose too much by using skill 1 if you don't have BP batteries. Well, nothing else to be said. Joe is a 5 out of 5 and a very strong damage dealer, and a must-have moving forward. Next one is Bertrand. We have here 124% SGR and intelligence. They buffed his endurance because it was very bad. Now it's 112. That's a very safe value. With just 82% dex, that should be enough most cases. He can use both skills and spells. Bertrand starts the fight with 13 BP, and then he applies 2 different effects in your party. Charge up, skill 1 time, charge up, spell 1 time. If your character uses a skill, it's going to apply a 10% enhanced arts. That is a 10% increase to skill damage. Also a defense up that increases damage taken by 10% for the whole fight. And then also a passive that will be buffing 5% of SGR, endurance, and dexterity all turns. And yet another healing energy to self. That is a chance to heal by the end of turn. Okay, if 5 of your characters do this, you're gonna have 5 stacks. You're gonna have a chance to heal, I think it's 37%, and up to 25% buff to SGR, endurance, and dexterity, while improving your damage by 50% and 5 stacks of defense up. Okay, but then you have the charge up spell part. If your character can use both skill and spell, you're gonna trigger both. Bertrand can, Shao can, Sarwin can, some other characters can as well. All mages can use a normal attack to trigger the skill part, and then use any spell to trigger the spell part. Okay, the spell part, 10% spell damage increase, 10% defense up, decreasing damage taken by 10% for the whole fight, and allows you to have power boost to 1, agility, intelligence, and will buff that can reach 25 if you have 5 triggers. And also the same way to heal by the end of turn. So you can theoretically get 10 defense ups of 10% in a character that is much more than just support. Now, when attacking with skills, Bertrand will then buff SGR, endurance, and dexterity by 15%. By turn ends, also HP recover to all allies, and chase with Nocturnal Chase. If using spells, he will then buff agility, intelligence, and will by 15%. By turn ends, will feel OG guard to all allies. It says very small. I don't know what very small is. Small is 15 points. It's either 5 or 10. And then he's chasing with Flamanix. 2 different attacks. Both are strong. Then turn begins 2 BP, meaning 5 BP per turn. Always apply 15% attack boost. And then 5 times heat up 10%. So by turn 5 onwards, 65% damage increase for everyone. You can see that you are going to buff your damage by quite a lot, alongside having defense subs that will allow you to sustain. There's also Sword increasing 5, 30% damage increase at all times, 40% damage reduction when resisting, and then 37% chance to evade resisted attacks. Very useful for many scenarios. Then we have 2 different skills that we'll be using on loop, if possible, but there are some problems. Bertrand only has 5 BP. To use a 13 BP attack, he's going to need 2 BP batteries. If he wants to use his second skill, you may live up with 1 BP battery, but it will depend. Now, skill 3, it's 13 BP, it's skill based, and it will chase with Nocturnal Chase right after, but it already has 2 attacks. It buffs SGR and intelligence by 40%, attacks with double S power, and then chase with Twilight Fall. That is another double S power, if I'm not mistaken. So, 2 attacks and the extra chase. If you use the second one, you're going to apply morale down medium to the enemy for 3 turns. That decreases damage taken on source by 25%, and then you cast morale up very large, improving your damage by 50% for 3 turns. And then you're gonna chase with Flame and Ix. You would be better off cycling between those skills if you can, but it does require a lot of VP. It's the only problem that Bertrand has. And if you don't have VP, you use your skill 1 that applies defense down, decreasing the defense of the enemy by 15% for just 1 turn. Well, doesn't help much, but improves damage of other characters. No skill has the fast effect, so his agility is not that great, 100% only. But since the morale down lasts for 3 turns, you can even use skill 2, then skill 1, then skill 3, and then go back to skill 2. You can. Anyway, Bertrand offers a lot to the party because of his skill and spell charge up, and it's easy to fill him in many squads, adding sustain and buffs to the party. Also receives a 5 out of 5, and it's probably the less interesting one because it's hard to use, but still, a 5 is a 5. Moving on, we have Rio Queen. 101% endurance now, and 114% will heavily buff it. Agility is 140, that is extremely important. It will keep the character even more relevant in the future. It starts with 11 BP and applies Sphere of Sacrifice on all enemies. But this only trigger if there is only one enemy surviving. Why is it that? Because some Spiral Corridor fights have minions and then a boss. You kill the minions, then you have to deal with the boss. This will only trigger if there's only one enemy remaining. In fights where there's just one on the start, it always works. And when the turn begins, those enemies will lose 15% STR, Endurance, Dexterity, and Intelligence. As you can see, only Agility is missing here to the buff MR skills, but you also debuff via STR. Will also self-inflict defense down, 50% defense down to self. Only 1 turn though. It says to all enemies, but it only triggers when there's only 1 left. Okay, but this effect is just on the start of battle. You want to keep reapplying it. It is easy though. The best way to is to use skill number 3, 11 BP cost for a fast skill. And even if you are attacking and the enemy also uses a fast skill, it's 140% agility, much likely for you to attack before the enemy. And then, if the target has been debuffed for endurance, it is easy because it will happen if you use Fear of Sacrifice. You're going to debuff STR and Intelligence by another 20%. You apply a defense down of 30% for 1 turn. And we'll also apply Fear of Sacrifice for 2 times. You also get it again because every time you attack, you also apply. Every time you attack, you also chase with Hell Scratch. This is a skill that hits between 3 to 5 times with blunt and slash damage. Also applies an attack boost of 10% with each new hit. Then, look. The chase attack also triggers the Fear of Sacrifice, so you can apply 4 stacks of this. Then still debuff STR and Intelligence by another 20%. Apply the defense down here, and all the other defense downs of 50%. Of course, the enemy only going to have the debuff value effect on the next turn, but since you already start the fight with 1 stack of Fear of Sacrifice, it is actually pretty okay. Well, this improves your damage and applies debuffs to such a high standard that you will also barely receive damage from enemies. Unless the enemy has something on his sleeve called the Defy Weakness mid-turn, or self-buffing when attacking, so he can recover part of the debuff. If he uses Defy Weakness mid-turns like the Megalith Dragon, then you're gonna receive a lot of damage. If not, well, a lot of the old content of the game will be easily beaten just because of this character. If you are a new player, getting the Dread Queen is amazing. Besides all of that, you still have more. Turn begins, she applies morale down, debuffing the damage of the enemy by 25% at source. Also a guard down, decreasing the defense by another 25%. She also debuffs STR and intelligence by 15% always. One random enemy. If there's just one enemy, then how much can you get? 4 stacks of 15%, then 75 here, and then up to 95 because of the debuff from skill 3. She then also gives 30% damage increase at all times, 40% damage reduction when resisting, and another 30% damage reduction at all times. 2 layers of defense, and still has 30% damage increase. If you don't have enough VP for skill 3, you can use the free one that applies defense boost to self. The second skill is an AoE intelligence debuff of 20%, but it does not make much sense unless you are in a fight where the minions die easily. You will still apply the Fear of Sacrifice, but it only triggers when there's just one enemy left. She's the best single target debuffer in the game, no questions asked. Yet another contender of a 5 out of 5. This banner is crazy, yes, I know, and it receives a Gold Plus award. It's a must-pull banner, and I would say that you should only stop if you get Joe and ReUniverSe fast. And I could say that Bertrand is harder to use, but even when used on the right setup, he is amazing. I'll try to get all 3, but decide upon that yourself. If you think different than me, say here on the comment section. The next banner is the Igomahl banner. She was buffed for just endurance, now being 115 for both endurance and wheel. 133% intelligence, as you can see, lower than Joe, but higher charisma though. On turn begins, she gets an action order up, but it's just for 1 turn. Taunt, that has the same effect as both Vagnus and Emperor versions. And when being attacked, she has a 50% chance to get Revenge Claw. Then when attacking on overdrive, she will release this Revenge Claw and uses the Axe and Ritus attack. It's AoE, B power, debuffs enemy STR and intelligence with a chance by 10%, and will buff the party STR and intelligence by 15% because it's rank 1. If she is directly attacked, she decreases damage taken and counters with skill number 2. This one is B power as well, and has a chance to debuff STR and intelligence by 10%, and buff STR and intelligence by 15%. When used as a chase, as a command, debuffs 15 and buffs 25%. It's a weak attack, both ones are. You have to stack plenty of times to actually matter, sadly. But she also offers support to the party. By turn ends, she will always revive. She has LP unless she's killed by poison. Has 5 PP per turn, and also applies defense boost medium. That will decrease damage taken for everyone by 15%. Also a defense up of 5% 3 times to all allies. She has R wall defense 6, decreasing damage taken by 50% at all times. Also, on turn begins, she blocks 1 hit and self-buff endurance and wheel by 20%. Now, how does she offer support? By skill 3, a fast attack that applies morale down large to the target. That would decrease damage at the source by 35%, but you also have morale down with Bertrand. They clash on this. Morale down does not stack. She also applies guard up large to self. This will decrease damage taken to herself by 35%. It is 10 BP cost, not much, but she only has 5, unless you have VP batteries. You don't need to actually use this skill 2 times in a row. You can use the skill 1 that has self-recover HP of 1,500. If you have extra BP batteries, I suggest you to skip and actually cycle skill 2 and 3, if possible. But the problem with Igomahl is that she has very low damage output. Vagnus and Emperor increase your sustain as well while doing much more damage. It is hard to use her, and I don't see much reason to bring a counter tank that does not do much damage. So I would say that she deserves a 4, but it's very easy to skip. Then we have Barthélemy, and he has 100% endurance and 110% will. 95% dexterity because he can inherit S's word attacks, but here he's only using spells. his intelligence is good enough, 133%. He starts the fight with 11 BP, will fill the overdrive gauge of everyone, and also improve overdrive damage by 50% to all allies. And then when the round begins, he will apply this effect Cunning Circles for 10 turns. When you are attacking, you're going to apply a defense boost of medium effect to self. This is 20% damage reduction. It stacks and it doesn't have any limit. If your character attacks multiple times, it's going to trigger multiple times. When you are attacked, you're going to apply an attack boost that improves damage potential by 15% for all allies. Both effects last for 2 turns and then will stack. The more you attack and the more you are attacked. Then you will have a fast stance for 1 turn to self on the start of the fight. And then every turn you have a 50% chance to enter fast stance again. When you attack on overdrive, you're gonna give 3 BP to all allies. And by end of turn, you give 15 points of OG for everyone. This is the part where I don't feel like Barthélemy helps too much. Silence feels overdrive gauge, even Goddess feels overdrive gauge. He does not give too much to actually be sure that you're going to speed up your overdrive as much as you want. Barthélemy has 3 damage increase passives, 40% all times, another 40% all times, and then another 40 when landing weak attacks for a total of 120% besides the overdrive increase and all the other attack boosts. By the end of a turn, 3 times he will get extra 5 VP and will apply Heat Down, decreasing damage potential by 5% to self. I don't know why he has this, but okay. He doesn't have any chase attack, as you can see. Much like Silence, his damage output could be better, but it actually just enables other characters instead of just doing a lot of damage himself. Look, skill 3 is just C power, but it's AoE, Hidden Shadow, fast, and if you are in a fast stance, before attacking you're going to apply Cunning Circles for 1 turn to all allies. Why? Because it only lasts for 10, and in those moments you're going to actually apply double times. This effect doesn't seem all that great now that we have someone like Noel in the party that can apply lots of attack and defense boosts, but he also applies Guard Down to the enemy, decreasing the defense of the enemy by 35% for 5 turns, and also defense down, this time decreasing by 25%, 5 turns. You can keep reapplying defense down when Guard Down does not stack. You'll have to reapply only after 5 turns. Okay, so not much damage, and he's just trying to apply more Cunning Circles, but Cunning Circles only improves your attack boost when you are hit. Skill 2 is 9 BP as well, and it is a row attack as power that has a chance to debuff SGR and intelligence by 20%. And he has a 2 BP attack that can buff intelligence to self. Well, those skills are actually really average. Do not help that much. Even this fast stance here, applying Cunning Circles again, helps, but it has big problems with 101% agility not being that fast. So your own attack thing may not even work if your other characters are attacking before Barthélemy, and Silence offers more in Noel too. So I don't recommend pulling for Barthélemy. He's pretty much, for me, 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Ludwig, and this character here is strange. 115% endurance, just 111% SGR, because 2 of his skills are spells, actually. And 133% intelligence, since he has a better focus on spells. He starts the fight with 13 BP, and then applies this effect on everyone. No love or charisma buff. You get a 40% damage increase at all times, and then reduces damage taken by 40%. So this is strange, right? Because no love or charisma buff. You don't always bring buffers, but if you do, and they have love or charisma buff, you cannot use Ludwig on max potential. All other allies get 10% damage recoil. Why? Because he's a villain, of course. But that's just on the start of the fight. Attack lands, he gives BP to all allies, and when he attacks, he always chases with Dark Sword. This is actually a pretty good attack. He hits 2 times with B power, allowing him to be useful on fights where there are multiple enemies, slash and shadow damage too. and that means that he will always give at least 2 BP to everyone. If you have one of his inheritance attacks that can allow him to attack with different skills twice, then you're gonna give 3 BP to everyone. Not really bad. On turn begins, he self-buffs SGR and intelligence by 25%. Also has heat ups, max of 5 times, 100% damage increase at the end. And then attack increases by 30%, and then it increases by another 30% for spells. Damage taken is reduced by 30% at all times, and has a 25% chance to block any hit. Starts the fight with 1 less LP, so just 5, but it really makes no difference. Okay, so he's not really all that strong if you think about, but as a farmer, he works super well. That is, if you care about that, because he can actually just use his strong attack, 13 BP 8 power, shadow and slash damage, and then before attacking, he buff breaks everyone besides self, even your allies. And then when attack lands, will debuff the enemy by 30% for SGR, Dexterity, Agility, and Intelligence. Well, that is interesting. All 4 effects they are used for damage calculations. But then, if you are buffing with any of your other characters, he's going to remove those buffs. That's why he works for farming. And you can use this and chase 2 times with B power. Also works super well for Well of Challenge, but you don't get too much there, just 100 gems per week. He also has this double S power attack that hits on roll, and it's Slash and Shadow. Gives 30% HP required to everyone. So they will just get hit by damage. And he's still gonna chase. You can use this twice in a row. Well, for grinding. And then skill 1, it's something that you use after skill 3. This one is just shadow damage though, and can debuff SGR by up to 15% on max level. So as you can see, this character has a lot of rules to be used, and those rules usually means having to choose well his partners. And a lot of good characters don't work well, like Leon, like Matriarch, many others. You don't want to hinder your party selection. He's really hard to use and does not pay off. Really, I don't think he's worth choosing. I believe he's a 3 out of 5, like we were discussing on the live stream, but if you don't think that's fair, say here on the comment section. This banner will receive a Silver Minus award, because you can still kinda use Barthélemy in Igomahl, but I don't think these characters are good. Just look, Joe's banner is much better. If you have gens, summon for Joe, and skip the other, unless you are a big fan of Barthélemy, Igomahl, and Ludwig. With all that said, this is just my first impressions. I'll be making full reviews. Say here in the comment section if you agree or not, and I hope to see you soon in the next video or live stream. Goodbye.